Do classic car auctions help classic cars find long-term owners? I have this motto that is probably a cliche, but I sometimes use it to describe cars that have been sold through online auction platforms or classic car auction platforms. And I say sold today and for sale tomorrow. And one of the reasons that I say that is because a disturbingly high percentage of classic cars end up getting resold into or onto the same platforms or through the same platforms that they were sold by. And so this is one of the reasons why I've never been real vocal about car sales, why I don't have a bunch of inventory listed on my website, why I'm not taking cars to major auction houses, because you don't walk up to a lady and ask her how many times she's been married. It's not very nice. Sort of the same thing with the cars. There's the mystique of how many owners has this car had. And when it becomes a public record, suddenly the car becomes less interesting. It sort of makes the car less mysterious and less exciting. And I don't know if all the people see it this way, but let's look at a couple of questions. I'm going to ask you guys a question that you can answer in the comments. Would you rather have the car that's been stored for 50 years, was never maybe not 50, 30 years or 25 years, was never publicly advertised in an auction or eBay or, Bring a Trailer or Hemmings Auctions or sold through RM or Gooding? Or would you rather have the car that you just say, click the buy it now button on eBay or, just keep bidding to win on Bring a Trailer? I personally would rather have the car that was hidden from the world. I mean, I bought my last car off of Facebook Marketplace, and I was annoyed that it was advertised on Facebook Marketplace because it means that there's a public record of the car. This is one of my weirdest things. This is one of the weirdest things about me, but I sort of fetishize cars that have no paper trail in the public market, where if you Google the VIN number, you can't find anything. You know why? Because you know that car has not been passed from person to person to person to person to person to person to person. Now, so in some cases, really, an auction is the only way to buy a car. One of my customers bought a 300 SE Cabriolet years ago. We were looking for a good 111 or 112 cab. This car was being liquidated as part of a huge museum collection. I think in that case, there's an exception. But when you have a guy that's just finding these super low mileage cars and throwing them out there for guys to keep bidding them up into the stratosphere, isn't that car a little less special when it shows up at auction again a year later with 500 more miles on it because the guy didn't have a positive ownership experience, because maybe they weren't ready or prepared to own the car? A lot of people go and bid on these auctions assuming they're buying the car. And there's some people out there that do sell some really great cars. I've never heard anybody call me and say, oh yeah, Dean Lumbach sold me a bad car. John Wood sold me a bad car. Although John doesn't sell publicly through auctions, which I commend him for. But there are a lot of resellers out there that sell cars that present really well. Can't name any names, I might get in trouble, but they present really well. And when we get the car, it's just disappointment after disappointment or disappointment. Sometimes the estimates to repair these cars being higher than the sale price of the car. So imagine paying, $15,000 for a 380 SL, and the car needs another $17,000 in repairs. And let's say a timing chain, subframe mounts, AC compressor, rear subframe mounts, drive shaft flex discs, maybe pull the transmission because the front pump is leaking. Maybe the top just sort of cleaned up nice in the photos, but it's really stiff. Maybe the odometer and the defrost actuators need to be replaced. Oh yeah, maybe it needs tires too. Maybe it's got a sticking brake caliper. Maybe all four of the subframe mounts are bad. Maybe this, maybe that. But the point is, a lot of people buy these cars in appearance, and then they either overspend on them, and then they're like, oh, I have so much money in this car. Is it actually going to be a reliable, usable car? They start second guessing themselves like idiots, after they do all the work. Or they just let the car go. They toss it back into the wild. And I find that each time it sells for a little bit less, Or if it does sell for more, it's because they got two guys on the hook that didn't bother to research the car's history. So I'm not saying we should take like all the cars that have been sold and bring a trailer and crush them. But what I am saying is that a lot of people that buy on online auctions are extremely fickle. And it's not the car's problem. It's the buyer's problem, because they think that they're getting a perfect car when really they should ask themselves, is there really such thing as a 40-year-old or 30-year-old car that's perfect? And then number two, instead of having like a dedication to the car, they're just a bunch of car guys. You know how much I despise, quote unquote, car guys. Car guy is a guy that loves all classic cars but doesn't understand that some are better than others. The car guy is the guy that has, that doesn't have garage space or is 300 SD and it's just a 4-door sedan, and then offloads it because he has a Fiat Spider or something that needs the garage space. It's like the car guys are the ones that oftentimes take the mystique of these cars that are offered for the first time and just totally trash it. I just find that to be really frustrating. So I know sometimes Jerry Seinfeld refers to himself as a car guy, but Jerry's really, don't be fooled. Jerry's a Porsche guy, whether you like it or not. He is a dyed-in-the-wool Porsche guy, loves his Porsches. And that's a good thing when you have one specific mark of car that you're very attached to, because you actually get to know it and you become cognizant of it. The type of car guys I talk about, the kind of guys that are like, oh yeah, I've got a cool car. I just dropped 55 grand for this Hellcat. I'm like, no, you should be working on your car, my friend. Learn how to change your rear brake pads or pull your transmission out and reseal it. If you're really going to be a car guy, it's a price you purchase in blood and sweat. And it's a thing you purchase in blood and sweat. So going back to these online auctions, and so we started seeing this with in-person auctions too. Some really big money cars would be offered 1 year, and 2 years later they'd be back, and then nobody would buy them. Although the people who bought them thought they were getting an investment. But I think the best example could be my friend Dave Cunningham's 280C. The 280C was sold after he did a major restoration on it. He needed some money. He sold it on Bring a Trailer. Got a world record amount of money for it. And the guy who bought it could not get used to the car, and it was back on the platform 6 months later, and it sold at a loss. And so if you're buying one of these cars on an online platform, you need to ask yourself, have I driven the car before? Can I find somebody to service it? Am I willing to learn how to service it myself? Am I willing to actually learn to become the owner that this car needs? Because if you're not, you have no business buying the car unless you're willing to do some learning, because that's how these cars actually go from, good to a little worse to a little worse to a little worse. Anyway, all right, I'm done ranting. I hope you guys appreciate the Mercedes you have. Please like, share, and subscribe, and tap the bell for notifications. And we'll hopefully see you in the future. In the meantime, if you're bidding on a classic car at auction, remember to try to go see the car first. Even if it involves hopping a couple flights and flying into the middle of nowhere, make sure you actually want it.